Okay, good afternoon. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, so we are part of a team on the Discovery Zone team that we submitted a grant to be able to breed our Panamanian golden frogs, which are from Panama, as you may have guessed. And we've been housing these frogs for a while, but we haven't been breeding them. So we needed a little more of an extensive setup to be able to properly breed them. So we submitted a grant that we got $1,000 approval for, and that is what we did. So it's myself, Jason, and Andrew from our team, and then we've had contributions from Darcy, who's now on shows, and then Rick Stuckey as well. So we'll see if I can know how to use this properly. So, Panamanian frog basics, just so you guys kind of know what it's about. There's a lot of, there are thousands of amphibian species on the planet. I don't expect you to know everything about Panamanian golden frogs, so I was just going to give you a little bit of information about them and where they're from. Their lifespan is about 12 to 15 years in captivity. It can be a little bit longer, just kind of like most animals in captivity. It just kind of depends on their quality of life. Their coloring can vary quite a bit. They can be solid golden yellow. They can have dark markings on them, which most of ours do. They can have dark stripes, dark spots. It just kind of depends on what they ended up with. Males are about 3 to 12 grams. Females can be double that size, and they usually lay clutches of eggs, anywhere from 200 to 600 eggs. And it only takes about 9 days for their eggs to hatch into tadpoles. However, from that until they get from tadpoles into froglets can take about a year. So that is actually quite an extensive process from what we have been breeding in the Discovery Barn area, which has been dart frogs and Amazon milk frogs. So that process is quite more extensive than what we've had previous experience with. These frogs can actually secrete a toxin, and it can be fatal to humans in large quantities. It actually is a circulatory and respiratory toxin, and it can cause you to have convulsions, and then obviously you die. So we wear gloves when we handle them, and they secrete toxins voluntarily. It's not kind of just all the time. So as long as we don't stress them out, then they shouldn't be doing that. And then these guys, we've got a map here, and then also I did not take this picture as I've never been to Panama, but this is a very nice visual description of what their habitat looks like. So they live in both wet rainforests and dry cloud forests of the Cordilleran Mountains in west central Panama. So the most important things about these frogs and why we are breeding them is that they are now extinct in the wild. They were last seen and videoed in the wild in 2006, which is what the video that we will watch a little bit is about. So they mainly went extinct due to chytrid. And I know a lot of you have heard about chytrid, but what it is, it's a fungus that ends up growing on the frog, and then they basically die from it. So they don't live a whole lot longer once they've contracted chytrid, and it is incredibly highly contagious. So that pet trade and habitat destruction has really led to their extinction in the wild. So we can prompt the video here, and we're only going to watch like a minute and a half of it. But this is a David Attenborough video, and it was the last known time that these frogs were videoed in the wild.
The sound of rushing water could drown out the calls of a frog. However, here in this stream in Panama, there's a species living alongside that has developed a novel way of dealing with that problem.
The rare and wonderful golden frog. It does have a voice, but it's not loud.
Individual males set up their territories beside the river and then wait for females to turn up. And since good positions for the territory are not common, they may have to hold them against intruders.
And here one comes. Just in case his call is inaudible, he makes his message clear with a wave. And his rival waves back. He repeats his message so there's no misunderstanding. but Rival is not deterred. Well, that makes things perfectly clear. Another arrives. Perhaps at last this is a female. No, it's another male, so there will have to be a wrestling match. That should teach him. And his rival signals submission by keeping his head down.
Just kind of gives you an opportunity to see them in their natural habitat in the wild, what they look like, and have the very relaxing David Attenborough describe it to you. So we talked about chytrid, and that there are lots of zoos in the United States and in Panama working to breed these frogs. Up. Okay. We're going to try again. Yes, no, maybe? Okay, there we go. So this is a photo of a pair of Panamanian golden frogs in amplexus. Amplexus is just the term for frog and toad breeding. So the male is the smaller one on the top of the female's back. You can see the size difference there and again the pattern variation. And so there are lots of zoos in the United States and in Panama working to breed these species and basically house a stockpile for re-release. Currently we can't re-release. Chytrid is just still pretty rampant in Panama, so that's got to be resolved before we can re-release them. However, we've been working with St. Louis, Omaha, the Maryland Zoo a little bit in San Diego on just trying to figure out how we can make this program work for us. There are there are a lot of facilities in the United States that are being very successful at breeding these frogs and creating that stockpile. I've talked to a few people. They're hoping in the next 4 to 6 years maybe we have figured something out to be able to release them into the wild. But we've also got to do a lot of education in Panama first, just like so many other nations. We need to educate the local people about why these frogs are important, why to not take them and put them in your houses. They are considered good luck in Panama, so that's obviously also very detrimental. So there is a pet trade in Panama where people just breed them and buy them and keep them in their homes. So those are all individuals that would be great to have in the genetic stockpile. And then in order to address chytrid, there is a bacteria that has been being played around with a little bit on actually putting the bacteria onto the frogs because the bacteria can help fight chytrid. I know it sounds kind of weird putting a bacteria onto an amphibian because they are very sensitive, they breathe through their skin. But they've had some success, just not with Panamanians. So there are lots of scientists trying to figure out how we can go about potentially making that work for us. So our project and what we are doing here, this is just another photo of them in amplexus, and then those other two photos are egg photos. So their eggs are laid in very long chains. The photo that is kind of red, that was taken with an infrared light. Their eggs are incredibly light sensitive, so if you expose them to light, you're done. Like they die, they're dead. You might as well, like all of the work that you put in was lost. So we deemed these eggs not viable. They didn't hatch after 12 days. We gave them an extra couple of days just in case. And so the photo on the left is when you pull them out and they're all clumped together, that's what they actually look like. So we received 5 males, 5 female individuals in 2014. We just started breeding them last year, or at least attempting to breed them. There is a very large husbandry manual that has been put out that we try to follow those recommendations as closely as possible. And then for our team, we have also started an amplexus study with our individuals, so which basically means we put our females in with our males and try to see who likes each other. Everybody likes everybody, so that's great. So we got lots of options. And with this particular species, if the males like the females, it's pretty immediate. So it should be within a couple of hours, they should latch on to females and then hopefully make lots of frog babies. But their amplexus is also quite long for frogs. It's anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. So we keep really good track of them. We take body condition photos, we weigh them. We want to make sure that, because this whole entire time they don't eat, and that is the standard that's in the husbandry manual. They don't eat when they're in amplexus, but obviously having an amphibian not eat for 4 to 6 weeks can make a zookeeper real nervous. So we make sure that everybody's got body condition photos and that we are weighing everybody, and we've got all kinds of track of that. Okay, so where are we now? So this is our setup. This is what our grant has produced. We've got 4 tanks. So the cream colored thing on the left on the bottom, that is our chiller. Their water needs to be regulated between 68 and 72 degrees. It obviously gets really, really hot here. This setup is also in the downstairs discovery barn, so it gets kind of hot in that barn in the summertime. So we need a chiller to try to regulate that water temperature in between 68 and 72. If it's hotter than that, the eggs are not viable. If it's colder than that, they don't develop. So you can kind of see where their sensitivities are not really working for them as far as a breeding program. So then the container that's on the bottom right, that is our sump system. So basically the water starts out there. It goes through the filtration, which is, I think there's a laser pointer on this thing. So the water dumps out over here, and it goes through this filter pad, and it does a couple of different things. It catches large debris, and then it also has a carbon filter on it. It's this black part right here. It takes some other junk out, and then the water drops through here. There are mixed media bioballs here, which help control nitrites, nitrates, ammonium phosphates. It goes over here into the bioballs. Bioballs basically help aerate the water to create more oxygen, which also does a couple of, without getting real technical, they just do a couple other things. And then it comes over here, and you got clean water over here, and there's a pump over here. So the pump takes the water over into the chiller, and it cools it down. It's circulating in there, cools it down, comes all the way back up over here, and in the very back we've got PVC dumping in clean, cooled water into each individual tank. You can kind of see the waterfall right there. And then each tank has its own setup, got its own plants, its own organic materials in it, and then the water would filter out through this drain right here, and it all goes down this direction and cycles back through. So we created this system. It's got UVB lights, it's got LED lights. It also we drilled these tanks, which this is our next video, so we can go ahead and cue up the other video. And we drilled our own tanks. So drilling glass is not the easiest thing to do. However, we figured out how to do it. I talked to a couple of guys at St. Louis when I went on the Naples trip, and made me a whole lot more comfortable about drilling glass. So basically this is a very similar setup to what we ended up using. There are very, very fancy systems that are way out of our price range of what our $1,000 could provide. I mean, it would take $2,000 to make a fancy system. So we had a very similar setup to this. This is a drill bit right here. It's a diamond coated drill bit, which is designed to drill through glass, through tiles, stuff like that. And then you really just take a piece of 2x4 that you've drilled a hole in, and you clamp it to the tank, and you've got a hose over here that runs water to keep everything cool, and you, with using no pressure at all, just let the drill and the gravity do the work. You just do the best you can and don't break the tank. So we'll watch the video for a little bit just so you guys can kind of see what is involved in it.
Help me pour water. Some people do it out themselves. I haven't mastered that yet. So we'll start with a little bit of water. We get our bit in there, flat, and then start spinning. Slow and steady like that.
Because you can't put a lot of pressure on the glass, or you'll just shatter the glass, It takes a few minutes. I was incredibly nervous about doing this because we only had 4 tanks and I didn't want to break any. It took about 20 minutes per tank for me to drill it, when a more seasoned person who's done it quite a few more times, it takes them about 5 to 6. So, however, I can proudly say that we didn't break any tanks. So, we didn't break any tanks, we didn't waste any money. Okay. So then that's our setup. I know, like, for somebody who's not super into amphibians or into water and filtration stuff, it can look a little overwhelming. So we'll have a time for questions at the end. If I can still make the clicker work. There we go. Okay. So like I said, we have been working with other facilities as well, just as far as collecting information, so that we are trying to get as much information as possible to make our setup the best for us and how to breed our frogs the best that we can. We are a phase 1 facility, which basically means that all of our individuals are related, which obviously in the zookeeping field, you're like, what? Why are we breeding frogs that are going to be inbred? However, it's so you can practice breeding them. And if you create froglets, which that's a picture of a little teeny tiny froglet, and he's super cute. So if we could get lots of those, that's adorable. And so it's to practice with, and then we can submit to acquire other individuals that are not related. So then once we're really proficient at it, we can have individuals that could be contributed to a viable wild population, you know, hopefully at some point. So we talked about future plans to release. We talked about the bacteria and things, and then where do we go from here? We currently have 2 pairs of frogs that are in amplexus. They are in their I think their 3rd and 5th weeks of amplexus. We've been assessing them every couple of days, just checking on them, making sure that everything is the way it needs to be. We don't have any eggs yet, however, we're hopeful. So we've got lots of information about how to do this. We're just waiting on the ladies to lay some eggs. Just waiting on the ladies. So, but there's also a photo of the tadpole over there, which they look very different from other tadpoles. If you're familiar with tadpoles at all, they're just a different shape. And yeah, like I said, those guys are super cute. So, do you guys have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
What are you going to do with the inbred froglets? I mean, what happens to those? Because you can't send them out to other zoos or anything.
Yeah, they can be sent out as like exhibit animals,
Okay.
but they cannot be part of a breeding program. So yeah. Yeah, John.
You guys already have a setup ready to go for tadpoles?
So that's the nice thing about these tanks. We built this system so that, because you cannot move the eggs once they're there. You move the adults, but you have to leave the eggs there. So once, hopefully, eggs are laid, we move the adults out, and then hopefully 9 days later we have tadpoles, and then they will spend their entire froglet life in that tank. So it's an 18 by 18 by 18 size tank, and that is good and copacetic for their entire life cycle. So we wanted that size on purpose so that we didn't have to move anybody or anything. They just stay there their entire life until they become adult frogs. Yeah?
Will they be that dark as froglets, or are they going to
Yes.
turn more yellow?
That's the color that they are when they're teeny tiny froglets. It's just camouflage, just like so many other things that are young. It helps them blend in, and then later in time they'll become more bright yellow. Yes?
If they are sensitive to light the eggs, does that mean they hide them, and therefore do you have any trouble finding them or anything?
They do usually hide them underneath rocks. That's where we found the 2 clutches that we were successful producing eggs. They laid them underneath rocks, and then we checked them at least twice or 2 or 3 times a day to see if there are eggs in there. Once we find them, you kill all the lights, you put black paper over the tank, and you just leave it there. And we checked on them about day 4 or 5, and then again on day 9, and you just have to sit and wait and see if you get any tadpoles. So if there are tadpoles in between when the eggs are laid and before you check it, there is organic material and things in there that they can eat. And then we're all set up and ready to go with the food that the tadpoles need should we get them. So we're already prepared for all of that as well. Yeah.
I know you mentioned that you're in phase 1, so everyone is related.
Mm-hmm.
Have any other facilities that are also phase 1 had any froglets that they've seen, like any neurological or physical deformities, for lack of a better word?
Not,
They are related?
not that I know of, because it's just first generation. It's not like 3 or 4 generations down the line. So to my knowledge, no phase 1 facilities have had any non-typical froglet issues. Because there are lots of frog issues when frogs develop. We have them all the time. So, but no atypical froglet issues.
Okay, if you have more questions, we'll save it
Yes.
for the end so Tim can get started. But thank you, Kayleigh. That was very informative.